the first early one. They criticised the kickstart return spring being too weak. And Ducati changed it the next week. They had a lot of influence.
Hello and welcome to Twist Grip Tales in the series of my friend here, Ian Falloon. Welcome back.
Thank you, Bruce.
Episode 2 about this amazing man, mild-mannered school teacher and oboe player, but Superman, well, super sport. Questions are going to be answered like, did Ian's parents really have Desmo heads? They didn't, did they?
No.
No. Okay, so we'll move on. So we're going to talk about Ian, the author. 45 books. Ian, you started as a journalist.
I did, yes.
And you were saying in the previous episode that because you were working in New Zealand in the Ducati motorcycle shops,
Or distribution.
that you managed to get hold of original Ducati documentation.
Yep.
And from there, you started. How did you start writing your first article? What was your first article all about?
Well, the first article was about the super sport, and this was in '83 when it was quite new, but forgotten. And I was just trying to tell people about that this bike existed and how important it was. You know? And that article was sold in various publications around the world.
So in '83, you were talking about the round case super sport,
yes.
the square case
the
super
round
sport,
case.
or about the round case?
Round case one, yeah.
The very expensive and very special one.
But it wasn't in '83.
No, it was almost a forgotten piece of
that's
technology,
right.
wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. No one cared about it then.
And you could have bought one back then. I think originally, when I bought my GT, a Super Sport was worth brand new, something less than $2,500 Aussie. And in '84, you could probably buy one for the same price or less.
2000.
Yes,
Yep.
so they weren't prized. And yet that original Super Sport, how many did they make? 200?
401.
Ian knows. 401. That's not many. That's a pretty limited edition.
The important thing is it was just a one run, just a single run, and it was the only round case with a Desmo head. So that's why they're sort of special. And they formed the basis for most of the successful racing Ducatis.
So they were tested as this was the Imola. Race bikes were the first.
They were the first one, and then that was a spin-off from the Imola race bike was the Super Sport, but also the Nelson Daytona bike was a 750 SS. The Halewood NCR, they were based on the round case 750 SS. That was the successful bike. Yeah.
Yes, and I remember lamentably there are things in life that you think I really should have done that. In Melbourne, our agent for Ducati was Ron Angel. G'day, Ron. And he was for many years selling Desmo head kits. And now these were round case Desmo head kits, slightly different fins, I think, on them, were they?
Not really. It's more the round case. It's just the
heads?
The bevel drive is different, so that...
Oh, right, yes, of course. So 2 bolts instead of 4 bolts or something like that.
No, it's just the shaft in a different position.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I mean, they'll bolt straight on, but the timing wouldn't be right.
Yes, well, these were heads that he was selling with, now the complete heads, all valves, with the shaft, ready to drop on, with a 40mm carburettor, $1,000 for a pair of heads. And even at the time, even though that was a lot of money, that was more than half what I paid for the whole bike, my GT. I still thought that was a good value for money at the time. I never did it. Kicked myself 100 times. But it would have been a copy. It wouldn't have been an SS.
No, but things change, don't they?
They do. They do.
Yeah.
So after you wrote the article about the SS, what happened after that? Did they invite you back? Did you get the bug? How did your career move from there?
Well, I didn't actually do much writing for a while after that. It was after I had the accident that I got back into writing again.
So that was when you were here in Australia?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was in Australia when I wrote the article on the SS also. But I started writing historical articles for magazine, Two Wheels, Street Bike, all these sort of things. But then it's when I saw this book, the Ducati Buyer's Guide, that had the 750 SS buying guide, and it was word for word from my article on the 750 SS.
Plagiarism.
Yeah, that's when I decided.
Greatest form of flattery.
That's when I decided, well, I'll write a book myself.
So your first book was?
The Ducati Story.
There we go.
Yeah.
What a great first book, and that's been a great seller.
It has been a great seller. 6 editions and 4 languages. Yeah, so it's been good. Yeah.
So let me guess the 4 languages. Italian?
Yes.
Japanese?
No, not Japanese.
Oh.
No.
I'd have thought the Japanese would be big on it.
No.
Ah, there's one.
No. German, French, English, and Italian.
What a great book. And then what happened? Did you kept doing a bit of journalism? And
yeah, I kept doing journalism right through, and for quite a lot of magazines around the world, Italy, America, Britain, quite a lot of journalism. But I kept writing. I was writing a lot of books in the 90s. Yeah, I was commissioned to write books. So I ended up writing books like the Honda story, the Kawasaki story, Kawasaki races, the Suzuki books, and BMW, Moto Guzzi. Yeah.
now, writing about all of those manufacturers, you'd think that some people might have a theoretical view of what should be in the book, but in fact, Ian, you were telling me that you've owned quite a few bikes in your time. I think I've owned a few bikes in my time, a couple of dozen. How many bikes have you bought and sold in your lifetime so far, Ian?
Around 150. Yeah,
That's
of all makes. Yeah, pretty much most mainstream makes except Yamaha. I don't know why I never got a Yamaha, but
the musical tuning fork didn't make it to the open.
No, it didn't. No. Not that I don't like Yamahas. It's just they never had a bike that was the right bike at the time.
At the time,
yeah.
So what sort of authors, magazine or book writers influenced you in your journey through journalism?
Oh, right. So there was Cycle magazine in America was the one that influenced me the most. I bought it since 1966, and I still got every copy. And it was those guys. That was how I got into Ducatis, because they had all those guys had Ducatis 750s, and then when they won at Daytona, it was just that whole Cycle magazine with Ducatis. That was the biggest influence on me. I used to devour those magazines. And fortunately, I was very lucky that later on, I got to know all those guys. I stayed with Phil Schilling many times, visited him. I know Cook really well, and so that's been good.
It's amazing to get close with guys like that. And that Cycle magazine, for those of you that haven't read it, back in those days, Cycle magazine would have articles on how to take a bike and make it better. They'd tell you how to track race or whatever, and they'd give you all of that. No holds barred, they'd show you everything that you need to do. Some really good hands-on technical articles.
Well, the thing about Cycle magazine back in the 70s and 80s, they sold 500,000 copies a month. That was the biggest motorcycle magazine in the world by a long shot. So they had a massive budget, and also because they had such a wide readership, all the distributors just listened to what they said. They had a lot of power.
And the guys that wrote, as you say, they owned good bikes. They took bikes racing. They had a lot of personal experience. You got a real sense of firsthand what it was like and what were the modifications you had for the bike. They were really good.
But if they criticised anything, like with Ducati, when they did their 750 GT test, the early one, they criticised the kickstart return spring being too weak, and Ducati changed it the next week. They had a lot of influence.
America always had a big sway for the Ducati thing. The big
well, and I think that
good or bad.
Yeah, good or bad. I mean, that's why we got the 860, wasn't it? Because the Americans wanted that, and it didn't work out. Yeah, we lost the 750 because the Americans decided we're not allowed to have right side gear shifting, so we lost that.
Yes, but they never actually. Ducati only shifted it across with a transfer shaft. You could still keep the right hand shift.
Yeah. Oh, for a year, a couple of years only, but then after that they went to the problem.
Yes, yeah. It's all very sad. But anyway, that's the way life's gone. All the bikes are shifting on the left now, and I think I only own one motorcycle with a shift on the modern side.
Your bikes are all hand shift, aren't they?
Half of them are hand shift. That's right. Yeah, right hand shift. Have I got a left hand shift? No, I don't. All right hand shift. Yeah. its history. So, and are there any other books that have?
Yeah, well,
influenced you along the way?
I used to. I've got a lot of books, a large book collection, and I used to read Vic Willoughby. I really like Vic Willoughby's writing, technical writing.
English writing.
English writer. And he used to write, he was a tester, and I used to get the British Motorcycle Weekly, and so he used to write for them, Vic Willoughby and Mick Woollett also, and I knew both these. I got to know them later on. Mick Woollett had a large photographic collection, and my publisher had a budget for photos, so they says, you go and visit Mick Woollett. So I visited him many times and had to talk to him about his history and racing and journalism. It was good.
So what are the books that you've written, Ian, that have you've obviously poured a lot of yourself and your research into it. What's been a surprise to you in writing? So have there been any books that have actually taught you a few things that you've learned?
Oh, it's been like, well, I was commissioned to write a book called Kawasaki Races. Now, I didn't know anything about racing Kawasaki's, really.
They don't do many Desmo bikes, Kawasaki.
No, and so that was really interesting. I just contacted a lot of people, and they were so helpful, like Cork Ballington, Anton Mang, Bob Hansen in America, a lot of old racers and stuff. And that was pretty interesting. It was hard, but you know, it was good.
The green machines, yes, Cork Ballington. They had those tandem twin two-strokes.
That's right.
And some, and of course they started off with those the triples.
Well, I actually went up to Sydney and interviewed Neville Doyle and his son Peter Doyle. I interviewed a whole lot of people for that book, and it was interesting. Yeah.
So there's not many marques that you haven't written on. You've done all the Italians. You've done Ducati, MV, Laverda, Moto Guzzi.
Yeah, I saw that. I haven't done the others Italian.
That's most of them. And then you've done BMW, Triumph, and of the Italians, you've done Honda.
Kawasaki, Suzuki, but not Yamaha.
Not Yamaha.
That's the one bike I haven't owned. I've never written about Yamaha. There you go.
Yeah. So 45 books so far, and you've got some others in the wings coming out in 2020.
Well, the MV story, the big history of MV, has been delayed another year because of the COVID thing. That was meant to come out last year. So that would be 2022 now. And I'm doing an update on the complete book of Ducati. I've just done a Moto Guzzi 100th anniversary book.
Of course, yes, the centenary this year of Moto Guzzi, and this year is also the centenary plus 10 for, is it Mondial? They don't make many bikes anymore. No, Gilera, that's right, but not written about. But so Ian, a couple of books that I've got off you recently, very reasonably priced. The Ducati GT, the definitive book, the last one, and the Ducati Sport.
Yes, yeah.
And you were just saying that there's an addendum that's coming out for that as well. Because for the GT, I was surprised that there are 11 series of GTs, and possibly a couple of minor.
Well, no, there's just one version of one of them that I didn't even know about, that I've added 2 pages into the book. Yeah, so. Yeah.
So if you're into Ducati, the GT, the Sport, really, you can't buy one book without the other, because they're just such gorgeous machines and such a lot of great information in there as well.
Well, it's information you cannot get anywhere else. Yeah, so.
From the man himself. So if you're looking for a book, why would you want to go anywhere else if you're looking at any of those brands of motorcycles, the marques, the history of them? Ian Falloon, the author par excellence. Ian, it's been a pleasure. Ian Falloon. Find him online. Lots of books. It's been a pleasure, Ian.
Thank you, Bruce.
There we go. Yeah. On Twist Grip Tales, more tales to come. Ian Falloon on Twist Grip Tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment. And if you've got any questions for Ian, go to Ian, or you can ask Twist Grip Tales. And stay tuned for the next episode, which is Concourse and Authentication with Ian Falloon. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Bruce.